Welcome to Finding Holiness, where we delve into timeless Torah wisdom, revealing the sacred in everyday moments. Join us on a journey to elevate your spirituality and discover holiness in every aspect of life. I'm your host, Rabbi David Kadosh, and together, let's embark on a path of spiritual exploration. I hope you enjoy this next episode. All right. Today, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll conclude the laws of Tevilat, Kelim, and we have some very, very interesting topics to end off. First thing we're going to tackle today is Shimush Lifnei Tevilat. Can a person use a Keli before it was dipped? לדעת רוב הפוסקים אסור להשתמש בכלי שצריך טבילה לצורכי מאכל אפילו כדרך ארעי. According to most poskim, a person is not allowed to use a vessel that has not been dipped, even if it's for just temporary use. Omnam b'diavad, however, b'diavad after the fact, גם אם בישלו בו במזיד, if someone did cook with that utensil that was not dipped, המאכל כשר, the food is kosher. הואיל והמאכל עצמו לא קיבל טעם של איסור, because the food did not acquire or absorb any prohibited food. המתארח בבית ישראל שלא טבל לכליו, someone who's invited to a Jewish home, and the owner of that home did not dip his kelim. Very common question. לא יאכל בכליו. He should not eat from the food that was cooked in the utensils. ובשעת הדחק, however, in extenuating circumstances, כשאין אפשרות להשתמש בכלים חד פעמים, where it's not possible for the person to use single-use kelim, והימנעות האורח מאכילה עלולה לגרום צער ועלבון. What's going to end up causing is pain and embarrassment. יכול האורח לסמוך על דעת המקילים ולאכול בכלים שאינם טבולים. Then in that situation, for that time, he can eat from the food that was cooked in those pots or utensils. ילדים שהתברר להם שהכלים של הוריהם אינם טבולים. So you have children who, let's say, became בעלי תשובה, and they know that their parents have pots and pans that are not טבול. יכולים להקל לאכול בהם דרך ארעי. They could eat by their parents on a temporary basis, meaning just by happenstance, כדי למנוע פגיעה בהורים, in order not to insult their parents. אולם, הילדים יכולים להשתמש בהיתר זה בדרך ארעי בלבד. You can only do this, because that's what the situation is allowing at that moment. כדי שלא לקלקל סעודה, because you don't want to ruin the meal, because you're going to say, sorry mom, dad, I'm not eating over here. אבל לאחר מכן, חובה עליהם לקחת את הכלים שלהם לטבילה. You, as a good kid, and honoring and respecting your parents, you should go take your parents' pots and pans and kelim, and go dip them. ואם יתעצלו, and if the children want to be lazy about it, אין להם עוד היתר לאכול בהם. You have no longer a היתר to eat from those dishes. בעל מסעדה או מלון שלא יטביל את כליו ורגיל לארח ישראלים. So talking about in Israel probably, where you own a restaurant, or even here you have a restaurant or a hotel, and you didn't dip your kelim. The owner of the restaurant didn't dip the kelim, and most of the guests are Jews. נחלקו הפוסקים אם מותר לאכול בכלי המסעדה שלו. Poskim argue whether or not you can eat from a restaurant that didn't dip the kelim. יש אומרים שמותר, some say it's מותר. מפני Rav Ovadia is one of them that holds it's mutar. מפני שמעיקר הדין הוא פטור מטבילתם, כי מבחינתו הם לא נועדו לאכילה אלא לעסקים. Because the dishes that are being used and the trays that are being used to cook the food, the pots, is meant for business. וכמו שסוחר אינו צריך להטביל את כלי האוכל שקנה, just like we spoke about yesterday, that a merchant does not have to dip the items that he gets from that he's going to sell later on. כך בעל מסעדה ומלון אינו צריך להטביל את כלי האוכל שעל ידם הוא מתפרנס. So too, the owner of a restaurant or a hotel doesn't need to dip. This is according to this opinion. ויש אומרים, there are those who say, שאסור לאכול בכליו. You're not allowed to eat from them. שהואיל והם נועדו לצורך אכילה של ישראלים, because these plates, these forks that are going to be used is for Jewish people that are going to be eating. חובה להטבילם, you have to dip them. כי רק כלים שנועדו למכירה פטורים מטבילה. Only dishes and utensils that were meant to be sold are patur. הואיל ונאכלים בהם במשך שאיתם אצל הסוחר, because they're in the property of the merchant, it's going to be sold. אבל כלים שנועדו לאכילה, גם שמשלמים על כך נחשבים כלי אוכל, but other utensils that are being eaten at this restaurant, this hotel, even though you're selling the product, you're selling the food that they're gonna eat, still it's for food and you have to dip it. So he's machmir, and he says, למעשה, בעלי מסעדות שרגילים לארח ישראלים חייבים לטבול את כלי האכילה שלהם בברכה. he says that the owners of restaurants need to go dip their kelei achila with a bracha. And if they were not dipped, you cannot eat from there. Ulam b'shat adchak, in shat adchak, again extenuating circumstances, כאשר היעדרות בסעודה תגרום להזמין שר ועלבון, במאכלים עצמם כשרים ולא פקפוק, נכון לסמוך על דעות המקילים להשתתף בסעודה. So again, let's say you're invited to this restaurant, okay, and then you find out, and if you say, I'm not going to eat here, it's going to cause embarrassment to the guy who invited you and to the owner. In that situation, for that moment, you can rely on the mekilim. Yes?
So how we paskin?
How are paskin? The owners of the restaurant should dip their kelim, no question. They should dip their kelim.
In Canada, then how we do it?
I believe the restaurant owners dip their kelim, yeah? Yeah. Okay. Next thing, kelim chad pe'amim. This is foil pans or one-use items. Kelim chad pe'amim kemo tavnit afiya me'aluminium. Okay, aluminum pans. Enam nechshavim kelim ve'enam chayavim b'tevilat. He says are not considered utensils and they do not need tevilat. Ve'af mi she'achlit leishtamesh betavnit afiya pe'amim rabot. Even if you want to reuse that aluminum pan, foil tray, over and over again, lo yeshna tiv'a, it doesn't change, it's teva. Shehi no'ada leshimush chad pe'ami. When whoever made that aluminum pan, made it as a one-use pan. You want to use it 50 times over again? That's good for you. V'lachen petura mitvila. It's patur. Kufsaot matechet v'tzintzanot zechuchit shenikarim le'machalim ve'mashkim shebetocham. However, if you have metal boxes or glassware that you buy from the store, you buy orange juice in a glass bottle, okay? Or kedugmat kafe bekufsat matechet, or coffee in a metal container, ribot betzintzonot zechuchit, jam in a glass container, mashkaot bekabuet zechuchit, kevan sheregilim lezorkam leachar gmar tichulatam. Since we normally throw out these things after we finish using them, hem nechshavim kekelim chad pe'amim, they are considered one-time use utensils. Ve'en tzarich latvilam, you don't need to dip them. Omnam, however, hitore safek legabe mi sheyitze lamshich leishamesh bahem. Now let's say there's a guy that likes his little jam bottle and he wants to reuse it. יש אומרים שצריך להטבילם, הואיל ובכך שהחליט להשתמש בהם כדרך קבע, הפך אותם לכלים רגילים. Because some say, now you want to use this over and over again, it's a little glass jar, so therefore you have to dip him. וכיוון שהם יצרו על ידי גוי, the glass jar was made by a goy, צריך להטבילם. ויש מקילים וסוברים, and there are those who are מקיל and hold, שהואיל ובית ייצורם נועדו לשימוש חד פעמי. Again, since when the goy made this glass jar for your strawberry jam, it was only meant for one time. בעת שקנה אותם הישראל היו פטורים מטבילה. When the Jew bought it, it's פטור מטבילה. כיוון שישראל הוא שהפכם לכלים בהחלטו להשתמש בהם דרך קבע, הם פטורים מטבילה. So just because you want to change it into something that is permanent, they're still patur from tevilah. He ends up by saying, "Lema'aseh harotze la'akel shelo la'atbilam." Someone who wants to be mekil, not to be tovel them, rashai, he's allowed. Ve'harotze la'achmir, person who wants to be machmir, yatbilem belo beracha, should dip them without a beracha. Last thing that of the last section of the chapter, kelei chashmali, electronic utensils. Also a big question that is asked. ישנם כלים חשמליים שנועדו להכנת אוכל ובאים איתו במגע ישיר כדוגמת קומקום חשמלי, מצנם, טוסטר, לחיצה. So there are a lot of electric utensils that prepare food, that have direct contact with food, such as a water urn, a toaster, and other things. לכאורה צריך לטובלם. According to the letter of the law, you have to dip them. אולם, problem is, הם עלולים להתקלקל במי המקווה. They could be damaged when you dip them in the mikveh. So he says the following: Befa'al bekli chashmal pshuti ima chashash rachok. In very, very simple electronic or electric devices, such as he's going to talk about the kumkum, the urn. The chances of being damaged through the water is very, very minimal. Ubitnai shalachar tevilah yeshu otam zman rav ad shitpashu legamre. You just leave it dry a long time, and then you should be fine. Ulam bekli chashmal adinim, but there are more delicate electric utensils. Kedugmat kelim shesh bahem tzag elektroni. Some of these things have electronic screens on them. Yesh chashash savir sheitkalkelu ba'akvut tevilah. You dip that into the mikveh, there goes your product. So yes, omrim, there are those who say shekli chashmal peturim mitvilah. There are those that say that electric devices are patur from tevilah legamre. Why? מפני שדרך הפעלתם על ידי חיבורם לשקע שבקיר כדי לקבל חשמל. Because in order to use them, you have to plug them into the wall. וכלל הוא, and the rule is, כל מה שמחובר לקרקע אינו נחשב כלי. Anything that is connected to the ground is not considered a utensil, ואינו מקבל טומאה, and cannot be מקבל טומאה if a טומאה was to touch it. לכן אין צורך להטבילו. The plug is considered the ground. Even though it's not in the ground, the outlet is considered the ground. In fact, there is a ground wire there. Okay? It's considered the ground. So therefore, you don't need to be tovelet. Even though sometimes you use it with batteries, we look at the majority of the time how we use that object, which is connected to the ground. Not only that, it's also like a machine. The mitzvah is to dip utensils of food, not machines. And there's other svarot to be lenient. Those people that want to be lenient based on what we just said are allowed, because it makes sense. Since there are those people that hold that you have to dip them, if it's possible, you should listen or follow their opinions, and to dip the kelim without a beracha, or to find another solution to exempt you from dipping, which he's going to talk about very shortly. Therefore, in a clean vessel that there's very little chance that it's going to be damaged, like a water heat, a water urn, dip it in the mikveh without a beracha, wait 24 hours, it'll dry completely, and nothing will happen to it. Now, with regard to a vessel that might get damaged if you dip in the water, he gives you two pieces of advice. Aleph, number one, latet oto lebal miksoa Yisrael, give it to a Jewish guy who's a Jewish handyman, sheyifarek et hachelek shenogea ba'ochel piruk yesodi, and he's going to take apart the vessel, okay, the part that touches the food, ad shelo yechashev yoter kli, until it's no longer considered a vessel. He takes it enough so that you can't use it anymore. V'yarkiv oto mechadash, and he puts it back together. And this way, kacha kli chashev kikli shaso Israel. Now you have a kli that was made by a Jew, and the kli that's made by a Jew, en mitzvah letovlo, you're not en mitzvah letovlo, you don't have to dip it anymore. It's a good one. It's not a loophole. It's not a kli, and now you're making a kli. He says good advice. And the second piece of advice, latet et hakli b'matana legoy, give the kli as a gift to a goy. ולבקש ממנו לקבלו בהשאלה זמן בלתי מוגבל, and you're going to borrow it from him. We spoke about this the other day, and then you borrow it for him for extended periods of time. וכיוון שהכלי שייך לגוי, and since it belongs to a goy, וישראל אינו רוצה לקנות אותו לעצמו, the Jew does not want to acquire it for himself, אפשר להשתמש בו לזמן לא מוגבל ולא טבילה, he can use it for as long as he wants, he doesn't need to dip it. Lastly, כל זה, all of this that we said, אמור לגבי החלקים שמחוברים ממש לכלי החשמלי. It's talking about things that are mamash connected to an electric utensil. Aval tavniyot afiyah, baking trays, shemachnisim letoch tanur chashmali, that you put into an electric oven, chayavot bitfilah bibracha, they need to be dipped into the mikveh with a bracha, mipnei she'ena nechshavot kelim chashmalim, they're not considered electric utensils, ho'il ve'ena milchubaro letanur, they're not connected to the oven, ela rak munachot bo, they're just placed there. והן גם משמשות לעתים ככלי להגשת אוכל שנאפה בהן, and you also use it as serving tray sometimes. וכן דין סכיני blender, use a blender, the items that connect to a blender, ומערבלי mixer or mixer, כאשר החלק שבא במגע עם האוכל עשוי מתכת או זכוכית, those parts are either, if they're made out of metal or made out of glass, ומתפרק מהחלק החשמלי, and they can disconnect from the electronic part of the vessel, those you have to go dip him in a mikveh with a beracha. Okay, so that concludes the laws of Tevilat Kelim.